Ago, a great American in whose symbolic shadow we stand today signed the Emancipation Proclamation. This momentous decree came as a great beacon light of hope to millions of Negro slaves who had been seared in the flames of withering injustice. It came as a joyous daybreak to end the long night of their captivity. But 100 years later, the Negro still is not free.
You express a great deal of anxiety over our willingness to break laws. This is certainly a legitimate concern. Since we so diligently urge people to obey the Supreme Court's decision of 1954 outlawing segregation in public schools, at first glance, it may seem rather paradoxical for us conscientiously to break laws. One may well ask, how can you advocate breaking some laws and obeying others? The answer lies in the fact that there are two types of laws, just and unjust. I would be the first to advocate obeying just laws. One has not only a legal but a moral responsibility to obey just laws. Conversely, one has a moral responsibility to disobey unjust laws. I would agree with St. Augustine that an unjust law is no law at all.
Not want to give the impression that I feel a Negro is not capable of being president. There are many Negroes who are capable this day and were capable yesterday and day before yesterday and many days in the past. But because of prejudices and narrow-mindedness, Negroes have been held out of the political arena, and such a day will come, not too distant future, when the Negro vote itself will be powerful enough to be in a coalition with liberals in the white community and thereby elect a Negro president of the United States.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
Got some difficult days ahead, but it really doesn't matter with me now because I've been to the mountaintop. I don't mind. Like
Colleagues, thank you very much for your indulgence. Returning to motions and resolutions, this is the time to address the adjourn in memory motions. Colleagues, adjourn in memory. Senator Hancock?
Well, it's hard to follow that. But I think it's somewhat in keeping with the day. I rise to adjourn in memory of a community leader in my district, Albert Bendick, who lived a long and interesting life as an attorney for the ACLU, one of their lead attorneys early in his life in Northern California, where he was the First Amendment lawyer who defended Lawrence Ferlinghetti, the poet and owner of City Lights Bookshop in San Francisco, when Ferlinghetti was arrested for selling a book with Allen Ginsberg's poem Howl in it. He also represented Lenny Bruce, a comedian of the time, who also had been arrested on the obscenity charges that were very prevalent in this country around the early 1960s, even in a place like San Francisco, Senator Leno. But those were very seminal cases. Al Bendick was born in the Bronx, moved to Southern California as a young man, was a product of our community college system, and then transferred to Cal, where he got his degrees and then became an ACLU attorney. Later, he taught at Cal and also became the partner of Saul Zaentz in the Fantasy Films and Recording Studio in Berkeley. Fantasy Films, as you may remember, produced such really iconic films as Amadeus, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and The English Patient, really great films. He did that up until his death last week. He was a gentleman of intellect and heart, as we've been talking about today, who leaves behind a wife, 4 children, 6 grandchildren, and 2 great-grandchildren, and I would ask that we adjourn in his memory.
Thank you very much, Senator Hancock. We ask that you bring the name forward to the desk so they can be properly memorialized. Senator Pavley.
Yes, thank you very much. I'd like to adjourn in memory of a constituent that was very revered in the community. I've had the pleasure of representing some fascinating people since I've been in office in 2000. And Al Martinez, a well-known columnist for the LA Times, is one that I'd like to adjourn in his memory today. If you lived in the LA area over the past 3 decades, you probably have heard of Al Martinez. He's sometimes referred to as the Bard of Los Angeles. He chronicled the everyday life of Southern California as a newspaper columnist. And even though it was a long time ago that he began there, I was struck a few days ago when there was literally quite a few letters in the letter to the editor section of the LA Times on how people who had never met him, how much his columns meant to them, because he talked about real people and their experiences in life. Mr. Martinez died Monday at West Hills Hospital. That's in the San Fernando Valley of congestive heart failure, said his wife, Joanne. He was 85 years old. For those of us who enjoyed his columns, he often wrote about people he met, and sometimes stories about travels with his dog. He was a marvelous storyteller. His column in the LA Times debuted back in January 5th of 1984. For 25 years, Martinez considered such topics varied from gun ownership to taxes to AIDS, even recycling. He hated taking out the trash and separating it. Traffic gridlock, politics, and social justice issues. He often wrote from his home in Topanga Canyon, where he had lived since moving to Southern California in the early 1970s. He sometimes reflected and wrote about the fire danger that was included when you had the trade-off of living in this beautiful Santa Monica Mountains. I'd spoken to Al Martinez on several occasions at events in Topanga. He and his wife and his family are revered in that community and remained locally involved for many decades. Prior to being a reporter for the Times, he was a reporter for the Oakland Tribune in 1955 and stayed there till 1971. After joining the Times in '72 as a reporter covering local news, Mr. Martinez contributed to 3 Pulitzer Prize-winning efforts. He helped write a series on the growth of the Latino population in Southern California. He wrote about the 1992 coverage of the LA riots. In 1994, he wrote about the impacts of the Northridge earthquake. He received a Lifetime Achievement Award from the California Chicano News Media Association. He also wrote for several television series. During a wave of newspaper downsizing, Martinez received a buyout from the LA Times in 2007. But his readers wouldn't let him go. They put enough pressure on the Times that he was hired back within a month. The Times let him go again for a second time in 2009 when he was 79 years young. Not done yet, he soon began writing a column for the LA Daily News, which published his final one in March of 2013. And for those of you who live in the Santa Monica Mountains, he also wrote a column for his community newspaper, the Topanga Messenger. In addition to his wife, Martinez is survived by his daughter Linda, a son Alan, and 6 grandchildren. Please join me in adjourning in the memory of Al Martinez, a California treasure.
Senator Pavley, thank you so much for bringing his passing to our attention, and please be sure to submit his name to the desk to be properly memorialized. Senator Pan?
Thank you, Madam President. I actually, unfortunately, have 2 constituents to adjourn in memory of. First, I wish to rise in memory of David Lee Rogers, Jr., who is the father-in-law, actually, of Assembly Health staffer Patty Rogers, who worked for me on chair of the Assembly Health Committee last year. David passed away unexpectedly on December 19th at the age of 75. He spent 21 years with the state of California, although he was better known for his golfing knowledge and talents. And after retiring from his job at the state in '86, he actually was a consummate PGA teaching professional for nearly 2 decades. And when he wasn't found on the golf course, he was often in his garage, which he converted into a golf workshop and driving range. And so there he gave many lessons to his students, families, and friends and neighbors. And with every golf lesson, David would impart a good dose of his humor and wisdom. He also was involved in designing and repairing golf clubs and was an avid hunter and fisherman and loved the garden. He was preceded in death by his wife, Donna Marie, and he's survived by his 2 sons, 6 grandchildren, and 6 great-grandchildren. I would also like to adjourn in memory of Bob Lucas, Robert Lucas of Carmichael, who many of you may know, who is an environmental lawyer and lobbyist right here in Sacramento, who worked for the California Council for Environmental and Economic Balance. He had worked on climate change, clean air, and toxic materials in state government for over 30 years and is well known by many people in the environmental policy community. Bob was an avid skier, amateur astronomer, a lover of science, and accomplished musician. And one of his greatest joys was spending time with his family over in Lake Tahoe. He is survived by his children, Julie, Katie, Bonnie, Christina, Brianna, and Winston, and his grandchildren, Valentina, Charlotte, Aubrey, and Robert. And he will be having a service on January 20th over at St. Michael's Episcopal Church in Carmichael. So again, appreciate the journey in memory of both of them. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Plan. Please express our condolences to the family and give their names to the desk, please. Senator Lara.
Thank you, Madam President and members. I rise to adjourn in the memory of the late Sylvia Jewell Johnson, who passed away on New Year's Day at the age of 78. Some of you may have known Ms. Sylvia Johnson as Senator Holly Mitchell's mother, but Ms. Johnson was also a respected community leader, a loving mother, who paved the way for her daughter to eventually become the accomplished public servant and senator she is today. Ms. Johnson's legacy is filled with service, compassion, leadership, and love. Her journey began in South Los Angeles on September 25, 1936, where she was born to Jewel Franklin and Virgil Benson. She grew up in South LA, where she attended Hooper Avenue Elementary, Carver Junior High, and Jefferson High School. Go Democrats. As a youth, Ms. Johnson was a hard worker and a trailblazer for her family. Her senior year in high school, she received a scholarship from UCLA, but I'm proud to say Ms. Johnson had different plans. She had her sights set on the great University of Southern California. Fight on. Ms. Johnson indeed attended USC, a proud Trojan, and graduated in 1958 with a degree in sociology. After college, she set off a 58-year professional journey of public service to the people of the great state of California. At the Los Angeles County Department of Public Social Services, where she met, shared an office space with, and ultimately married Edward Mitchell in 1961. She worked with women and children in need, establishing the platform that Senator Holly Mitchell proudly stands on today. Ms. Johnson also served as a probation department, in the probation department as a corrections facility administrator. Her excellence in this area can be measured by Governor Jerry Brown's appointment of Mrs. Johnson as warden of the California Institution for Women, Frontera, during his first term in office. Can imagine having a mother as a warden. Ms. Johnson was also the woman of many firsts. In Alameda County, she served as the chief probation officer of Alameda County, where she became the first African-American woman to hold that position. Ms. Johnson's impact was not only limited to her work throughout her lifetime, but Mrs. Johnson touched the lives of countless men, women, and children across the state. Mrs. Johnson was also never afraid to take on tumultuous challenges. After a contentious Ku Klux Klan demonstration at Senator Mitchell's high school, Holly witnessed her mother's calm school tensions and advocate on behalf of minority students. Her mother's bravery and wisdom during that difficult time helped Holly understand what it means to provide vision and leadership. Mrs. Johnson was also an innovator. She received grants for developing national models for substance abuse treatment, non-traditional training for incarcerated women and girls, and gender-specific programming and prevention services for juvenile offenders. She was a visionary. She led and mentored hundreds of employees and skillfully managed major institutions, budgets, and politics, of course. She was a sister friend, mentor, motivator, and confidant who had a style and panache and loved fine clothes, something we both shared in common. In closing, members, I had the pleasure of meeting Sylvia Johnson, and I could tell you she had a great sense of humor. The first time I met her was at a Democratic convention in San Diego, and I went up to her and I told her that her and I had many things in common with her daughter. And she said, well, what do you and Holly Mitchell have in common? I said, not only did we get elected in the assembly the same year, but I was a black woman in my past life. And she laughed so hard. And she said, welcome to the family, honey. she was, you know, I have a sense of humor. We're the Senate. Come on. Senator, as you can imagine, the fierce style she got and the fierce leader that Senator Holly Mitchell is, you can imagine how dynamic and fierce Mama Johnson was in her 78 years. Today, I would like to honor the strength and important influence of Ms. Sylvia Johnson as a leader in California's effort to provide social services and as a great mother and friend to all she contacted with. I also want to honor Ms. Johnson's memory by recognizing the strong mothers throughout the state, many who sometimes go ignored in this building, who continue to make sacrifices on behalf of their children each and every day to ensure that their children can reach the American dream. Ms. Sylvia Jewel Johnson is survived by her daughter, Senator Holly Mitchell, her #1 grandson, Ryan J. Mitchell, cousins Danny Jones and Clarence Banks, and a host of other lifelong friends. Thank you, members, and I appreciate your time in indulging me in celebrating the wonderful life of Senator Holly Mitchell's mother.
Thank you, Ricardo. Senator Hall.
Yes, thank you. I just want to also ask that you keep the Mitchell family in your prayers as we commemorate and celebrate the life of Mrs. Johnson. I've had the opportunity of meeting her as well a few times, and I can tell you indeed she has a dynamic personality, but she's also is one strong woman, and I guess I can honestly say that the fruit did not fall from the tree. Holly Mitchell is a clear example of the type of leader her mom was. You see that in Holly each and every day, Senator Mitchell each and every day. I want to also express on behalf of the Legislative Black Caucus our prayers with Senator Mitchell and her family, and certainly her grandson as well. I would say that her grandson was the best friend of his grandmother. And if you knew Mrs. Mitchell, Senator Mitchell's mom, you'd know she protected her grandson probably from Holly Mitchell herself. And so, on behalf of the Legislative Black Caucus, our prayers are indeed with the Mitchell family. God bless you.
Thank you very much, Senator Hall. And let me just thank all of my colleagues for your flowers and warm embraces and hugs. Losing a mom is a difficult thing to do, but being a member of the Senate family has been very, very helpful, and you've been very supportive. I have to say, the best call I received was from the governor. Ryan had just come home from school, so I was able to put him on speakerphone so he could hear the governor say, "Well, she was really something," to which I know my mother turned somersaults, that the governor acknowledged that she was really something. Her goal was met. Thank you very much, Senator Lara and Senator Hall, for the acknowledgement. Under announcements, Senator Liu.
Thank you, Madam President. Talk about, well, I guess we can't talk about it, but anyway, California's aging population continues to grow exponentially. People age 65 and over now comprise 12.5% of California's population. Does that include anybody in here? By 2030, that number will be almost 20%. Last year, I chaired a Senate Select Committee on Aging and Long-Term Care, and yesterday we delivered our report to every office. And the report is titled A Shattered System, Fixing Long-Term Care in California. And I want to thank all of the members who joined me on that subcommittee. The report provides 30 legislative and administrative recommendations. The goal is to create a sustainable, long-term care system that enables Californians' aging and disabled population to live with dignity, choice, and independence. I urge you to review the report at your earliest convenience. I hope you could join me in creating a system that provides elderly and disabled adults with respect, support, and treatment they deserve. Please give it your consideration. Thanks.
Thank you, Senator Liu. Are there any additional announcements? If there's no other business, Senator De Leon, the desk is clear.
Thank you very much, Madam President, and may I say you look very good at the dais. Colleagues, I hope you have a very good weekend. We have a 3-day weekend again come Monday. Hopefully you'll have an opportunity to celebrate and participate in many of the MLK celebrations and marches that will take place. For those who are in Southern California come Saturday, our colleague, Senator Ben Allen, will have his community swearing-in ceremony, I believe, at Santa Monica High School this Saturday at 6 p.m. So those who are in and around and got nothing to do, come on down to Santa Monica High School and celebrate with our senator, our colleague, Ben Allen. With that, please have a very safe, good weekend, and we will see each other come Tuesday. We have floor session at 2 o'clock. Thank you.
The Senate will be in recess until 3:30, at which time the adjournment motion will be made. We will reconvene Tuesday at 2 p.m.